George Zimmerman with second-degree murder. And so we wanted to talk about that case this morning. And so we have a criminal defense attorney with us this morning, and that is Dennis Fuller, who is in Texas, and he joins us on the program this morning. Appreciate you being able to be with us this morning. So, you wrote a blog on this on your website yesterday about the Zimmerman case, and I thought that you had an interesting take on this, and maybe you could tell us about that, and that, in your opinion, there are three different court systems that we have in America: civil, criminal, and the court of public opinion. Where do you where is this George Zimmerman case?
Well, interestingly, it should be in the criminal court, and right now we're trying the darn thing just as hard as we can in the court of public opinion, which is really a bad place to try it for a number of reasons.
Yeah, and it does seem like this is going to be one, even though it's in the criminal court, it's going to end up being tried in the public court of opinion. And I'm just wondering if this fella, even if they did ask for a change of venue, if he can get a fair trial anywhere in the country.
I know it's important that he get a fair trial, but it's also important that the rest of the country get a fair trial. And what this really trying this in the court of public opinion is doing is polarizing our country and making us point fingers back and forth at one another. I think the guy can possibly get a fair trial right there where he is, and I think his lawyers are going to look very carefully at keeping the case there, and I can give you some reasons for that.
Why do you think that is?
Well, I think that we had a sheriff, a police chief, and a prosecutor, an elected prosecutor, who all three who are elected, they represent the citizens, they looked at the evidence in this case, and they decided not to press charges. I think that there's a real good possibility that when all the evidence is presented, that a jury is going to decide the same thing that the prosecutor and the police chief decided.
That they can't convict this guy?
That's right. That he had, this was self-defense.
So he ends up with an acquittal.
Exactly. I think that's quite possibly the case. Now, again, I do want to say, I wasn't there. I don't know what facts are going to come out. None of us do. And that's the reason you don't try a case in the court of public opinion. The court of public opinion is the only court in this country where there's no witness ever sworn to testify to tell the truth.
That's a great point.
It's the only court that a witness can call themselves to testify, and they can testify as long as they want, no matter how much bias they've got. It's the only court where you can change the facts, and nobody is held responsible for changing the facts. Mm-hmm. You've got unlimited opening arguments, you've got unlimited closing arguments, and the court's not empowered to dispense justice, but it's empowered to really subvert justice.
Well, and that's a great example that you give us, or that you mentioned this, because let's think back to when this story was first being reported and what NBC News did, right? They doctored video that covered up the fact that Mr. Zimmerman had a wound to his head from the struggle with Trayvon Martin. Then, even worse than that, a producer edited an audio tape of the 911 call from George Zimmerman to the dispatcher to make it seem that it was a racist act, that he was, we've all heard the two versions of the 911 call, where key portions of the call were edited out to give a particular impression. And so that's in the court of public opinion. And Dennis, there are a lot of people who heard that and have never heard the retraction, and they just believe, well, yeah, he said this really racist thing, so he obviously was out there stalking him to kill him.
And I got to tell you, that is just fraud. That is just lying to us. And that's the kind of thing that you shouldn't be able to get away with, and you couldn't get away with it in a court of law. They would snatch you up and hold you in contempt and prosecute you for lying under oath. But no, in the court of public opinion, NBC is going to get away with that, and nobody's going to hold them accountable. And really, we the people are just getting played with that kind of baiting.
I'm glad you mentioned that we're getting played, because the one thing that I've been able to kind of take away from this is the reaction, the hysteria across the country over what happened in this case indicates one huge problem in America, and that is, look how easy it is to manipulate the American people, their feelings and their actions.
It is. It is easy to do that. It's amazing, and it's very hurtful to the fabric of our society to let people have the power to just lie to us, stir our emotions, and then not be responsible for the fact that it is a lie.
Do you think that NBC could be sued for that?
You know, we run into the question on that, who's got standing to do it.
Yeah. I mean, GM, remember when GM sued them over what they did with those Chevrolet pickup trucks back in the 80s when they, deliberately made them explode to try and sell a particular point that they were pushing in a newscast and a narrative. And, of course, GM was the injured party, so they did have standing. I don't know, in something like this, does the Zimmerman family have some sort of standing? George Zimmerman himself have any sort of standing that they can go after NBC and sue them for this misrepresentation?
They ought to be able to. They absolutely ought to be able to. But the way the courts are not giving people standing in so many things these days, I wouldn't be surprised for the courts to say no. Protecting NBC. So I'm disappointed in that.
Dennis, let me ask you about this. And we've been talking a little bit about the court of public opinion, but let's go to the criminal court, which is where this is really going to take place. It's all going to be decided here. The prosecutor, the charges that she's brought, second-degree murder. Now, is this a case of they're going to go high? They're going to start high with a second-degree murder charge so that they can settle low, so they can come away with something that they'll try and believe that will be acceptable to both sides?
That's a good theory, and that's a good strategy for negotiation and settlement. But I think more importantly in this case, it's a way to further inflame public opinion, because the way they have pled this case, the racial profiling that they have alleged, the murder, basically murder with a depraved mind is what they call it in Florida.
And that's second-degree murder.
That's second-degree murder. If this were a Perry Mason case, they would have called it murder with malice.
Okay.
And basically that just allows them to inflame people a little more for a period of time when, I agree with you, they may not really think they can prove that, and they may ultimately settle for the lower, but their mission is accomplished as they're stirring the people over the emotions of it.
What I'm fearful of is that the prosecutor, the governor, the attorney general of the state, they really know that they don't have a strong case, but they're going to saber rattle this thing because they want to try and keep at bay the new Black Panthers and the Al Sharptons and the Jesse Jacksons and all that crowd. They're hoping that by coming out with this charge, it makes those folks calm down and make nice.
Well, I don't disagree with you, and I'll tell you the best evidence of that is the fact that the prosecutor didn't take this thing to a grand jury to start with, because a grand jury has the power to no-bill the case. And there's a very good possibility, I believe, that a grand jury looking at the same evidence that the police chief and the elected prosecutor were looking at would no-bill this case. By refusing to take it to a grand jury, they're able to, the prosecutor, the new prosecutor, is able to drag this thing out and keep her pulpit and keep her stage and keep the opportunity to do whatever they're doing here in the public eye for a long period of time without anyone having the opportunity to just cut their legs out from under them and say, no, this is bogus, and throw it out.
7:21 is our time. Dennis Fuller, attorney, is with us, and we're going to continue with him right after this break.